All right, want to get your take on this story we talked a lot about yesterday on the show. Fairly controversial with a variety of opinions. The Premier deciding to not take the Halifax Pride Parade, did not attend out of an abundance of caution from the, intel from the RCMP. You've been quoted as suggesting that you feel as though that you have concerns with this.
It's a really bizarre story, Todd. I think, there's two things. Number one, as far as I know, since Darrell Dexter first marched in the Pride Parade, I think every party has pretty much been represented. The Tories were late to the party, of course, in every Pride Parade the city has had. And so it wasn't just that the Premier wasn't there, it was that the PCs registered a float and no one showed. So we had representation from every political party except for the one that governs our province, with no notice. I think that's worthy of note. This is really a regional parade. We're living in a pretty divisive time, and I see one really important role of government as portraying a message of unity, bringing people together, ensuring that all Nova Scotians understand that they are represented by the government in power, regardless of, party or ideological affiliation of any kind. So that's one thing. But the more troubling part, honestly, Todd, is this idea that there was a security threat. Because if there was a security threat, why wasn't that communicated? Halifax Pride has refuted this and said that they were not aware of a security threat. We certainly didn't hear anything about a security threat, but you had all of the other political parties. You had lots of other participants in the parade. If this government was so concerned that they wouldn't even send their volunteers or MLAs to march in the parade, shouldn't they have communicated that? So I don't know what the real story is, but I think it was a mistake, and I think the communications around it has been as clumsy as the decision.
Okay, so people listening, and I got calls on this yesterday and emails saying we don't know what the intel was, and because of that, it's not fair to make comments. For all we know, the RCMP had valid information, and Houston was made the right decision, and it's a personal decision, his own personal safety, and we shouldn't judge because we don't know that intel. What's your response to that?
Well, here's what we know, Todd. The RCMP did not contact the PC party or the Premier's office. The Premier's office reached out to the RCMP. So presumably if there was a huge threat, the RCMP would have been proactive about that. That's their job. They didn't hear about that from them. They reached out and asked.
How do we know that? And I'm not saying you're wrong, but how do we know that?
They said that. This is from the Tory spokesperson.
Okay.
So Boudreau, the spokesperson, said, we reached out to the RCMP and asked. The RCMP did not contact us. So that's clue number one. Mm-hmm. And anecdotally, what I've heard is that the RCMP said, look, the Toronto Pride Parade got stopped. We have intel that there may be a protest associated with this one, which there was. But we also knew that. Everyone knew that. But it was a peaceful protest. We had no reason to think otherwise. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know what the conversation was, but what I do know is that Halifax Pride is very serious as an organization about safety. I'm sure that they were in touch with law enforcement, and I'm sure that if there was a serious threat, they would have communicated that, and they are on the record as saying that they heard nothing of the kind.
Interesting.
Listen, the Premier's a busy guy. He had to, I guess, be at a racetrack that day. He was at the IWK 250 race. Fine. I mean, he can make his decisions about where he needs to be. The issue is that there was no PC presence at all in the parade. So I think that's a head scratcher. It really is. And yeah, we don't know what the RCMP said. We don't know why people make the decisions they make. This is the party that leads our province. And what we do know is that across this country, we have increasingly divisive political rhetoric that's really ramping up. We're going to have 3 elections sometime in the next year. And we're all going to be subject to wedges and complaints and vitriol of all kinds in the world that I live in. And so, again, I think, it's our job as leaders. I would argue it's certainly the job as the party that leads the province to display a message and a symbol of unity. we are here for all Nova Scotians. We all have different ideas about what it takes to govern this province, and you and I talk about that a lot. But at the end of the day, I would hope that we can come together and agree that whoever's in charge, we govern it for everyone. And I think a lack of any presence without some credible explanation, and I would argue the explanation offered is not credible, diminishes that message.
Okay. Claudia, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Claudia Chender, NDP leader.